Princess Sailira of the Aurelian Star Crown had always believed in power and pride. Her people measured strength with the brightness of their bioluminescent flares, the sharpness of their words, and the weight of their fleets. Yet when the war ended, she found herself standing in the Grand Palace Hall, facing a union no one had expected, a marriage with a human named Marcus Hale. To the court, it was a political move, a symbol of peace, nothing more. To Sailira, it was puzzling, almost fragile. Marcus was nothing like the Aurelians. He was lean, plain-faced, and his movements were gentle, almost hesitant. He dressed simply, never adorned himself in jewels or ceremonial armor. He did not shout and he did not command. When he spoke, his voice was calm, soft, but always clear. He listened more than he spoke, smiled more than he scolded, and bowed with a humility that made her court whisper in curiosity and mild disdain. Many nobles rolled their eyes at him, and generals quietly mocked his quiet ways. Sailira herself had no reason to fear him. At first she felt protective. She watched him move through the palace like a shadow, unnoticed yet always present. He fixed broken devices without complaint, organized supplies, and even helped the palace children learn about human machines, water recycling, and simple logic puzzles. He carried no weapons, yet there was a sense of reliability in him that made even the palace guards pause when he passed. It was subtle, almost invisible, like the calm in the eye of a storm. But to Sailira, it was real. Despite this, she still underestimated him. She told herself that his patience was weakness. She convinced herself that humans, while clever, were fragile compared to Aurelians who could flare their bodies with pure energy or bend light into sharp, cutting beams. In her mind, strength was visible. Wrath was loud. Power was fire and fury. Marcus had none of those. Yet at night, when the palace corridors were empty and the lights dimmed to a soft blue, she would sometimes find herself in the quiet of their shared chamber, observing him. Marcus would sit near the window, quietly sketching notes or reading books that detailed systems of galaxies she had never cared to learn. He moved without sound, and yet he seemed to command attention, not with force but with presence. She did not understand it yet, but there was something in the way he approached every problem calmly, in the way he treated the small and vulnerable with care, that made her heart stir with unease and curiosity. He never demanded respect, yet somehow it was impossible not to give it. Even the palace staff, who had laughed at his human ways, found themselves following his instructions willingly. And when he smiled at someone, it was as if he acknowledged them entirely, not just as a servant or soldier, but as a living being with value. Sailira had seen countless Aurelians rise and fall in prideful fury, yet Marcus remained unaffected by such games. She felt both admiration and frustration. Why could she not figure him out? The more time she spent observing him, the more questions arose. Why did the humans survive wars that were far beyond their size? How did he manage to stay calm when insulted, ignored, or mocked? How did he endure without anger, and yet seem stronger than anyone in the room? For all his quietness, there was a tension about him, a power she could not measure, a confidence that needed no light or flare to shine. In the beginning, she told herself she was imagining it. Perhaps it was a trick of the mind, a projection of her desire to see something remarkable in a human. But deep down, she knew there was more. Marcus had come into her world quietly, like a shadow slipping past the gates. He seemed harmless, weak, gentle. But in that gentleness, in that calm patience, lay something unknown, something dangerous if awakened. As Sailira watched him sleep one night, she touched his hand lightly, feeling the warmth, the quiet life of a human heart. She wondered if she had misjudged him. She thought she knew what weakness looked like, what strength looked like, but perhaps she had been wrong all along. And somewhere deep in her chest, a small voice whispered that one day she would understand Marcus's power, but not in the way she expected, not with fire, not with flare, not with light. That day, she realized, had not yet come. Life in the palace settled into an uneasy rhythm after the wedding. Marcus moved quietly through the grand halls, helping wherever he could, never seeking attention, but not everyone welcomed his presence. Whispers followed him. Nobles rolled their eyes when he spoke. Generals muttered complaints behind his back. They saw him as fragile, a human who could never match Orlean's skill or strength, and in their arrogance they began to test him. It started small. A minor miscommunication during a resource allocation meeting, and a young officer smirked at Marcus, calling him a polite machine who fixes problems no one asked for. Marcus simply bowed and corrected the calculations without complaint. Celira watched, her heart tightening with unease. The nobles laughed, but she noticed the way Marcus's jaw clenched ever so slightly, like a rope pulled taut. It was subtle, almost invisible, yet it unsettled her. Then came the incident that would change everything. During a grand ceremony celebrating the new peace treaty, a high-ranking commander accused Marcus of sabotaging a shield relay. The accusation was false, a trap set to humiliate him in front of the entire court. The hall buzzed with shock and anticipation. The nobles smirked, eager to see the human fail. The children hiding behind pillars clutched each other, sensing tension. Even Celira felt her pulse quicken, not with fear, but with a strange, inexplicable dread. Marcus did not yell or panic. He asked calmly for proof. "Show me the data," he said, his voice quiet but firm. The commander sneered, waving his hand to summon the palace guards. "Take him away," he ordered. The crowd erupted into laughter and whispers. Celira's stomach churned. Tradition demanded the accused endure questioning, yet something inside her screamed that this was not ordinary politics. This was a challenge, and she knew Marcus would not bow. The guard stepped forward, but Marcus did not resist. He walked with a steady pace, his eyes meeting hers for a brief second. In that look, she saw no fear, no anger, only disappointment. It was not disappointment in her, but in the world that could treat a good person so cruelly. That silent glance burned more fiercely than any Orlean flame could. As the guards dragged him away, Marcus's hand brushed against the floor, releasing a small device that no one noticed except Celira. She picked it up, puzzled. It was unlike any Orlean technology she had seen. Her fingers traced the smooth surface, and she felt a strange warmth pulse through it, as if it contained hidden energy waiting to awaken. She hid it quickly, fearing she might be seen meddling. Hours passed and tension gripped the palace. Celira could not eat, she could not sleep. She wandered through empty corridors, imagining the worst. The nobles whispered about human weakness, mocking him behind closed doors. The commander laughed, certain he had won. Yet deep down, Celira felt a flicker of doubt. There was more to Marcus than anyone understood. He had patience, yes, but patience could hide strength. In her private chamber, she clutched the device he had dropped, turning it over in her hands. Questions swirled in her mind. Could he have planned for this? Was it possible that the quiet, gentle human she had married carried a power that even the Orleans could not measure? Fear and curiosity tangled in her chest. She realized she had judged him too quickly, seeing only the softness and missing the steel beneath. By midnight, the palace had fallen into uneasy silence. Outside, the stars twinkled cold and distant, indifferent to human affairs. Yet Celira felt that something was coming, something that would shatter her assumptions. Marcus was no ordinary human, and the contempt of the nobles, the mockery, the laughter, it would not go unanswered. She waited, heart pounding, sensing the quiet before a storm. Marcus's wrath, she now suspected, would be unlike anything the Orleans had ever witnessed. But in her heart she could not yet imagine its form. It would not be fire, not destruction, not blinding light. It would be controlled, precise, and terrifyingly effective. The spark had been lit, and Celira knew deep down that once it burned, nothing in the palace or the galaxy would remain the same. The palace had grown uneasy, almost tense, like a string pulled too tight. Marcus had been taken by the guards, yet Celira could not shake the feeling that something unseen was already moving. She walked the halls alone, the polished floors reflecting the pale starlight from the windows. Every footstep echoed like a warning. Her heart hammered, not with fear for herself, but for the people who had mocked her husband, who had underestimated him. Then the alarms screamed. Not the ordinary palace alarms. They were deep, mechanical, almost intelligent. Lights flickered across the grand hall, control panels blinked red, and the communication grids went silent. The Aulean soldiers froze. Ships in the nearby hangars lost navigation signals. Every monitor displayed errors that no one could correct. Panic spread like wildfire. Generals barked orders, but their words bounced off machines that seemed deaf to authority. Celira's pulse quickened. She ran to the command spire, her long robes trailing behind her. Screens showed systems failing one by one, not chaotically but methodically. It was as if the palace itself had chosen to act, and act in a way that only Marcus could control. Every shield relay, every defensive turret, even the communication arrays followed a pattern no Aulean engineer could recognize. She remembered the device he had dropped during the ceremony. Her fingers itched to use it, to understand it, but she hesitated. Then she realized she did not need to. The machines themselves were responding. Marcus had not been merely arrested, he had already begun his work. In the detention wing, Marcus sat on a simple bench. His hands rested on his knees. He looked calm, almost serene, as if the chaos outside was nothing more than a gentle breeze. The cuffs on his wrists lay open on the floor. The guards stared in confusion. How had this happened? The human they had thought was powerless. Celira approached him cautiously. "Marcus, what is this?" she whispered. Her voice trembled between awe and fear. He turned, calm and steady, eyes meeting hers with quiet determination. "I warned them," he said softly. "They didn't listen. I tried to be patient. I tried to teach them restraint, but some lessons must be learned differently." She noticed the faint glimmer in his hands. No light flare, no fire, yet a presence so strong it seemed to press against the walls. The palace itself responded to him. Security drones hovered in formation, waiting for orders that were already silently given. Doors locked and unlocked with invisible codes. Energy grids realigned themselves. Nothing was destroyed, yet everything was contained. Outside, the commander who had accused Marcus stormed into the wing with soldiers. "Seize him!" he shouted, certain that human weakness had finally been exposed. But as they approached, their weapons froze midair. Feet could not move, doors could not open. It was as if the palace had become a living entity and Marcus was its master. The soldiers looked at each other in panic. The commander's confidence wavered. What is happening?" he stammered. Marcus stood slowly, his movements deliberate, controlled. "I protect what is mine," he said, voice steady but full of authority that needed no volume to carry weight. "I protect her. I protect this palace. I protect everyone who trusts me." For the first time, Celira understood the truth. Marcus's human strength was not in muscle or flair. It was in intelligence, patience, and an ability to see patterns that others missed. He could act decisively, calmly, and with precision that left everyone else stunned. And when anger burned in him, it did so with control so absolute that no harm came to the innocent. The commander tried again to shout, to command, to assert authority, but his words fell into silence. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not shout. He simply gave one calm instruction, and the palace obeyed, not because of fear, but because it recognized who was capable of true protection. Celira felt awe and something deeper, pride mixed with relief. She had underestimated her human husband, and in that underestimation she had almost misunderstood the true meaning of strength. Humans, she realized, were not weak. They were different. They could endure. They could reason. They could unleash a wrath that was precise, disciplined, and unstoppable without cruelty. And as Marcus stepped forward, walking through the detained hall, the palace bending silently to his presence, Celira knew that the calm before the storm had ended. The human she had married was no longer quiet. He had opened a door that no Aulean had dared approach, and beyond it was a power that left even the proudest being stunned. The courtyard was silent, too silent. Even the wind seemed to hesitate, as if it sensed the power Marcus had quietly unleashed. Drones hovered motionless above the marble floors, shields hummed in place, and the entire palace felt alive, not in fear, but in obedience. Celira stepped forward cautiously, her heart pounding, and found Marcus standing in the center, calm, yet emanating a presence that left her breathless. The commander who had accused him strode in, flanked by soldiers, red-faced and trembling with frustration. "Human, stand aside or be destroyed," he shouted, hoping force would succeed where reason had failed. The soldiers gripped their weapons tightly, though their movements felt heavy and uncertain. Marcus did not flinch. His eyes, steady and unwavering, met theirs with something deeper than authority, an understanding that pierced through pride. "You overestimate yourself," he said quietly, each word measured, deliberate. "And you underestimated the value of restraint." With a subtle gesture, almost imperceptible, the soldiers froze mid-step. Weapons hovered inches from the ground, unable to fire. Doors that had been locked closed swung open silently. Panels and controls shifted with invisible precision, guiding systems to secure every corner of the palace. Nothing violent had happened, yet everyone felt the undeniable force of human intelligence and control at work. Celira's chest tightened. She realized then that wrath did not always roar or flare with light. Marcus's wrath was calm. It was precise. It was strategic. It did not aim to destroy blindly, but to expose weakness, correct it, and protect those who could not protect themselves. In that moment, she understood how deeply she had underestimated him. He spoke again, his voice steady, unwavering. "You think dominance comes from blinding force. You think fear ensures obedience. You are wrong. Real strength lies in preparation, in foresight, in protecting what matters while never harming the innocent." The commander stammered, unable to respond. His mind raced, but every attempt at defiance was silently neutralized by Marcus's control of the palace systems. Soldiers lowered their weapons, confusion and awe battling with ingrained pride. No one had ever seen such measured power before, and none could fully grasp it. Marcus turned to Celira, and for a brief moment the fury in him softened into quiet care. "I warned them," he said softly. "I did not wish for this. I hoped patience would be enough. But when those we protect are threatened, we must act, even when it is not easy." Celira felt a shiver run down her spine. She had married this man thinking him gentle, perhaps even fragile. Yet here he stood, a force invisible yet unstoppable, reshaping the palace without bloodshed, without chaos. His calm wrath carried a weight the proudest Orleans could not ignore. The commander's face paled. This is impossible," he whispered, but Marcus's eyes held no judgment for him, only an unwavering certainty that actions have consequences. "Impossible is a word for those unwilling to learn," Marcus said. "Your arrogance endangered everyone. Now you must face the truth." Celira stepped closer. She had watched Marcus endure insults, mockery, and challenges without complaint. She had seen him smile when others plotted, and now she understood the depth of his strength. It was not in dominance, but in responsibility. The human spirit could bend systems, influence outcomes, and deliver justice without cruelty. And as the palace itself seemed to respond to Marcus's will, securing defenses and neutralizing threats, Celira realized that the true battle had not been fought with weapons or energy flares. It had been fought in patience, in calculation, and in the human ability to act with both power and wisdom. For the first time, she felt both awe and humility. Marcus's wrath had been revealed, but it was not loud, it was not chaotic. It was precise, controlled, and terrifyingly effective. The people of the palace, the commander, the soldiers, they all understood one thing in that moment. The human she had once underestimated was capable of shaping destiny itself. Celira finally bowed her head, her glow dimming slightly with respect and realization. The quiet bond she had once taken for granted now burned brightly in a new light, a light of trust, awe, and recognition of power hidden beneath gentleness. Marcus had shown the galaxy what a human could do, not through destruction, but through measured, unwavering, and unstoppable wrath. And Celira knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The palace had grown quiet, but it was not peace that had settled, it was anticipation. Everyone waited, unsure of what would come next. Marcus stood beside Salira in the command hall, calm and composed. The soldiers and nobles who had mocked him, the commander who had tried to shame him, all watched in tense silence. For the first time, Marcus was not responding to attacks. He was leading the court with quiet authority. He began with facts. Logs, projections, records of supply misuse, and evidence of corruption spread across the holographic screens. Each revelation was precise, undeniable, and methodical. The nobles shifted uneasily, whispers turning into stammered denials. The commander who had accused Marcus of sabotage tried to argue, but Marcus spoke calmly, pointing to the data with quiet clarity. "You were reckless," he said, "and your pride endangered lives. Every decision you made without care has consequences." Salira watched him. She had seen his wrath before, the controlled force that had frozen soldiers mid-step and bent palace systems to his will. But this was a different power. It was not fear or domination. It was intellect, patience, and clarity. He exposed mistakes without malice, revealed corruption without hatred, and demanded responsibility without arrogance. The room hung on his words, every Orlean realizing that a human had taught them the meaning of true authority. The commander's face turned pale as Marcus continued. "Every action has a chain reaction. You ignored warnings. You ignored logic, and now you must face the results of your negligence." Soldiers shifted uncomfortably, realizing that Marcus's wrath was not bound to fire or energy. It was reason, intelligence, and truth, applied with precision. Salira felt a mix of awe and relief. She had once thought Marcus gentle, harmless, even weak, but now she saw how wrong she had been. Humans, she realized, were not strong because they flared or fought. They were strong because they could endure, calculate, and act decisively when others failed. Marcus had done what no Orlean could. He had delivered justice without destruction. Then he spoke to the court as a whole. "I ask not for vengeance, not for titles, not for glory. I ask for responsibility, transparency, and learning. Protect your people, protect what you value, and do not mistake arrogance for strength." His words echoed in the hall, measured and firm, yet without a hint of cruelty. The commander collapsed to his knees, unable to deny the evidence or the weight of Marcus's argument. Other nobles followed suit, acknowledging their failures quietly. Marcus did not celebrate. He did not gloat. He simply ensured the palace systems were secure, verified every process, and made sure every corner of the empire was accountable. Salira felt her respect for him deepen beyond admiration. He had corrected an entire system, reshaped behavior, and protected lives, all without raising his voice or striking a blow. His wrath had been revealed in the most profound way, the transformation of thought and order, not through fear, but through clarity and action. When the elders asked what he wanted in return, Marcus's answer was simple. "Respect," he said, "not for me, but for the weak voice in the room, the one that is often ignored, the one that carries truth quietly, patiently, and without pretense." The palace remained quiet for a long moment. Then murmurs of agreement began, soft at first, then growing into nods and whispers of understanding. Humans, they realized, were different, not weaker, not inferior, different. And sometimes different was stronger than they had ever imagined. Later, Salira and Marcus walked through the halls together. She noticed the subtle changes, the soldiers now attentive, the nobles cautious but thoughtful. It was a new order, not imposed with fear, but embraced with understanding. And she realized that the quiet human she had married had changed everything. For the first time in her life, Salira understood the depth of human strength. It was not in flair or dominance. It was in patience, intelligence, restraint, and the courage to act when it mattered most. Marcus's wrath had been delivered not with fire but with justice, and it left a mark that the palace and she herself would never forget. And as they passed through the halls, she knew the galaxy would never underestimate a human again. Weeks passed since Marcus revealed the depth of his human wrath, and the palace began to breathe in a new rhythm. The court was quieter, more attentive, yet alive with curiosity. No one dared mock him anymore, not out of fear, but out of recognition. Marcus's calm authority had reshaped their world. Celira watched it all quietly, learning from him even as she ruled beside him. The palace children were the first to feel the change. Marcus began teaching them human methods of problem-solving, patience, and logic. He showed them how to anticipate challenges, how to work as a team, and how even the smallest actions could prevent disaster. Children who had once feared him now ran to him with questions, eager for guidance. Celira observed them laughing, learning, and growing. She realized then that human strength was not only about facing enemies, it was about building the future. The generals and engineers, too, began to shift their thinking. They studied Marcus's methods, learning how to create defenses that could adapt rather than simply resist, how to analyze threats carefully instead of reacting with blind force. Celira noticed the pride in their faces fading, replaced by respect. They began to listen. They began to plan carefully. They began to think like humans. One evening, Celira found herself alone with Marcus in the observation tower, overlooking the glittering city below. She could see the fleets, the buildings, and the people moving like a living organism. The stars reflected off the palace windows, and she felt a quiet awe. "Marcus," she said softly, "I underestimated you. I thought you were fragile, quiet. But I see now that what I thought was weakness is strength beyond anything I imagined." Marcus turned to her, eyes calm and warm. Strength isn't about showing off. It's not about being louder, faster, or brighter than everyone else. Strength is patience. It's preparation. It's knowing when to act and when to wait. Humans survive because we endure, because we learn, because we care about what matters. That is what I wanted them and you to understand. Celira reached for his hand. "I understand now and I respect it. And you?" Marcus smiled, but it was a gentle smile, not proud or triumphant. "Respect is not enough," he said. "Understanding is what changes the world." Months later, a small fleet of pirates tested the borders of the Aurelian Empire. They expected easy plunder, expecting the humans to flee, expecting the Auleans to defend with overwhelming flair. But the defenses Marcus had helped restructure responded perfectly. Shields adapted in real time, communications rerouted, weapons positioned precisely. The pirates were stopped without a single casualty, caught in a net of strategy and preparation rather than fire and destruction. The news spread quickly. Across the galaxy, beings whispered of a human who could command without domination, who could protect without destruction, who could be calm and gentle yet unstoppable. Celira smiled quietly when she heard it. The same man they had mocked, underestimated, and dismissed had become an example for all. At home, Celira and Marcus continued their nightly walks through the palace gardens. She noticed how he observed every detail, the way the leaves fell, how the water flowed in the fountains, how the night sky shifted over the horizon. Even in small things, he saw patterns and solutions that others would miss. She realized then that humans were different, yes, but in that difference lay true power. It was not flashy. It was not loud. It was quiet, patient, and unyielding when needed. And it could inspire, teach, and change the world without violence, without cruelty, without showing off. Celira leaned on his shoulder as they walked. "You've changed everything," she whispered. Marcus looked at the stars and then at her. "I just did what I always do. I protect what I love and I fix what I can. The rest will follow if we do it right." And Celira knew he was right. That human patience, intelligence, and restraint, the calm strength she had once overlooked, was shaping a legacy that would outlast them all. Years passed, and the galaxy slowly learned what it meant to face a human whose wrath was tempered by wisdom. Marcus and Celira walked through the palace not as ruler and advisor, but as partners in shaping a future that was stronger, safer, and wiser. The corridors no longer echoed with whispers of mockery. Instead, they were filled with curiosity, respect, and the quiet hum of systems running efficiently under Marcus's guidance. Statues were erected across the capital, not of Marcus alone, but of joined hands. One human, one Aulean, symbolizing cooperation, understanding, and unity. Children ran past them, learning to respect both species and to value intelligence, patience, and responsibility over bluster and pride. Marcus had never asked for recognition, yet the galaxy gave it willingly, because his deeds spoke louder than any speech ever could. Celira often found herself watching him quietly. She remembered the first days of their marriage when she thought him gentle and fragile. She recalled the ceremony where nobles mocked him, the false accusation that had almost broken him, and the controlled wrath that had stunned everyone in the palace. He had not shouted. He had not burned anyone. He had simply acted with precision, protecting what mattered and exposing weaknesses without cruelty. That memory now felt like a lesson etched into her soul. One evening, as the twin suns of the system dipped below the horizon, Celira and Marcus walked through the observation tower, the stars reflected in the glass, shimmering like countless eyes watching them. Celira turned to him, her voice soft, full of reverence. "I underestimated you once," she said, "but now I see. Your strength, it has changed everything." Marcus shook his head gently. "I only did what was needed. Strength is not for showing off. Strength is for protecting, for guiding, for enduring. Humans survive because we care about what matters and act when it counts." Beyond the palace walls, other planets and fleets had begun adopting human methods. Defense strategies, logistics, and even diplomacy were being rethought. Beings who had once scoffed at humans now studied them, realizing that intelligence, patience, and calm action could outperform sheer power. A single human had reshaped the expectations of an entire galaxy. News of the pirate attack that had been thwarted without casualties spread far and wide. Stories told of Marcus's calculated defense, of how he protected lives without violence, and of how the humans' quiet strength had turned potential defeat into triumph. Across star systems, commanders, traders, and diplomats began to whisper the same lesson: never underestimate a human. Celira reached for Marcus's hand as they stood overlooking the city. "The galaxy sees it now," she said. "They see what we always knew. Humans are different, but in that difference is power beyond imagination." Marcus smiled faintly, the gentle warmth in his eyes unchanged by accolades or admiration. "They only see a part of it," he said. "True strength is not only what others witness. It is in quiet decisions, in patience, and in the courage to act when it is hardest. That is what changes the world." The palace lights flickered softly, the city alive with life and promise. Celira rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the calm, unwavering presence she had once dismissed. Now, she understood that the human she had married had not only protected her and her people, but had also left a legacy of wisdom, courage, and strength that would endure for generations. And somewhere in the quiet of the stars, a simple truth settled in every heart that witnessed it. Marcus's wrath had left the galaxy stunned, not because it destroyed, but because it revealed what humans were capable of. Calculated, patient, precise, and unyielding when necessary. A strength not of fury, but of enduring power. Celira smiled, her glow brighter than ever as she whispered to him, "I will never underestimate you again." Marcus looked out at the horizon, at the stars stretching into infinity. "Nor should anyone," he said softly. And so, the galaxy remembered the human husband who had been underestimated, the man whose quiet wrath had redefined strength, and the legacy that proved beyond doubt that humans, when pushed, could stand taller than the mightiest of stars. The legend endured, whispered in halls, told to children and respected by every corner of space. Marcus's calm wrath, his intelligence, and his patience became a standard others aspired to, not for fear, but for inspiration. The underestimated human had become the standard of greatness.